Well, joining me now are the environmental campaigner and author, George Monbiot, and the director of the Flying Matters campaign group, Michelle DeLeo. Thank you both very much indeed for coming in this morning. George, could I begin by asking you, because we've heard Jim Fitzpatrick, the minister, saying, look, let's get real about this. Aviation is absolutely central to the British economy. If we did anything to hamper it, it wouldn't mean there would be fewer flights. It would just mean they end up landing in Paris or airports in Germany. So there is a case for a balanced approach which does include expanding capacity at Heathrow.
Well, doubtless there is a transport minister in Paris and a transport minister in Germany right now arguing that if they don't expand their airports, they'll come to London. Somebody has to take a stance on this. Somebody has to say this is going too far. And it's very clear that it's going too far. A, because of the enormous impacts it's having on the lives of local people with all the noise and pollution that it creates. But B, because, and most importantly, because of climate change. And nothing that we do as individuals has as big an impact as flying. Roughly per passenger, per mile, it's the same amount of carbon dioxide as when you drive. But you might drive 10,000 miles in a year, you can fly 10,000 miles in a day. And so it has an impact out of all proportion to the economic benefits that it brings.
And isn't that the problem, Michelle? It's just the figures. I mean, I won't spend much time quoting figures, but I have been given some. So aviation has been growing faster than any other source of greenhouse gases. Between 1990 and 2004, the number of people using airports in the UK rose by 120%. The energy consumed by planes, 79%. I mean, these are pretty frightening figures, aren't they?
Well, I think, you know, we need to look at aviation in a global context because aviation is mostly an international activity. And the UN IPCC, if we're going to trade figures, puts aviation's contribution to global carbon emissions at currently 2%, just under 2%, and they expect it will grow to 3% by 2050.
But UK policy here, surely we should be looking at UK emissions and our actual contribution.
OK, well, you finish, Michelle, and then George.
Well, as I say, I mean, you know, it puts that predicted figure by 2050 to be 3% of carbon emissions. And even if you take into effect the non-CO2 factors, you're still talking about around 6% by 2050. So I think when you take that into account, and also the fact that actually globally aviation is growing slower than the energy production sectors or industry, that we need to approach this in a balanced way, because ultimately, you know, we live in a multicultural, multinational society. 50% of the population of the UK say they have close friends and family who live abroad. Now, you know, quite apart from the economic impact, you know, we need to be able to have something in place which allows those people to maintain those cultural and social links. And by actually not allowing aviation to physically grow to accommodate that changed way of living, it's simply a crude method of demand management. And actually what you will have as a result of that is that, you know, prices will go up because it will become a limited commodity. And the first people priced out of flying will be ordinary families who only do it once or twice, if that.
Okay. There are so many misconceptions and false arguments there that it's hard to know where to begin. We are talking about Britain's contribution to global climate emissions. The reason that aviation isn't going to make a bigger contribution worldwide is that many people around the world live in countries where they are too poor to fly. And yet we, as the people who are rich enough to fly, are having a massive impact on the lives of those poor people by causing all these carbon emissions. On this issue of, well, we have to keep expanding in order that people can make these essential flights, there's already more than enough airport capacity for people to make essential flights. But at the moment, people are flying to New York to do their shopping. They are going on totally unnecessary business trips, which could be done by video conference. We do not need more airport capacity. And on this issue, this last issue, where you say, oh, it's for the benefit of the poor in this country that we have to expand it. All the figures, as you very well know, show that the great majority of travellers who use airports are in the top socio-economic categories, and those at the bottom fly scarcely at all, even when flights only reach 50p or £1.
OK, do you want to go?
Yeah,
I think I could dissect. It was most poor people don't use planes. A lot of the flights for trivial things like shopping to New York. Well, those are just two things. If you respond.
I mean, there are obviously a whole range of things there. Yeah. First of all, you know, if everybody in the UK stopped flying tomorrow, it would make 0.1% difference to global carbon emissions, and I think that puts that in perspective. But it would have an enormous impact on our economic situation. The idea that, you know, poor people don't fly is just not true. You know, we know, you know, that in any given year, 50% of the population will fly once. And it's quite true that the well-off fly more. The well-off do more of almost everything. But the amazing thing is that actually, contrary to 20 years ago, most people can afford to fly occasionally. If you take it over a 3-year period, all the surveys show that figure of 50% goes up to 70%. Now, that 70% is not all, you know, the top levels of society. That's ordinary people, ordinary families who only fly occasionally.
Overwhelming number of tickets.
And the other issue which you picked up is about, you know, poor countries who can't fly. That's absolutely not true. In the developing world, and we now have, as part of the campaign, a number of organisations that work with farmers in the developing world. Now, the majority of fresh produce comes into this country in the belly hold of passenger aircraft at places like Heathrow. Now, to simply not allow expansion would have a direct impact.
Can I just move it? OK, right, OK. You've both had exchanges on those kind of specific points.